Hello, everyone. Kathy Couch here, your Rewired 360 consultant and potentially EMDR basic trainer. I'm here with one of my beautiful consultees out of Texas, Karen, and we had been discussing the process of what it means to get consultees and consultation. And we decided to create a video so that we can talk about the next step in becoming an EMDRIA credit provider. You don't have to be a consultant. A lot of people think that you do, but you don't. And so we're going to talk about that process and what that's like. So I'm going to allow Karen to kind of introduce herself and then maybe share about how we got here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be with everyone today. And the reason why we decided to record this for everyone is that this is a very mysterious process that doesn't have to be, doesn't need to be. I think um, for me, education is a huge value and figuring out how to make that more accessible. So that's why we felt like instead of just it being a one-off in a consultation, but making this accessible to other therapists. I know that in my private practice, the therapy part is easier than the business part. And so we were just in that conversation together about, okay, wait, I have the skills to be a consultant, but how do you take that in a business way and make that, bring those people in and make that accessible and kind of get your name out there? And I think that's one of the things that we're not trained on,
Yeah.
or um, even it's not even acknowledged of like, okay, wait, how do you do that marketing? How do you do the sales? How do you get consultees? And so I think this was one of your many answers of how to fill that gap in.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important process that we want to make sure it's clear that we're supporting people on the education career path, that it's not a single episode training, that this is a career path, that you can make yourself out there and you can have a niche. And by the time we get to a lot of where we're at, we do have a niche, but we don't know kind of how to execute that, or in your case, build relationships so that you can help people learn the strategies that you have. So we're just going to kind of start with a few questions. We're going to walk through what does it mean to be an EMDRIA credit provider? Why is it beneficial for the average therapist? What's your return on investment? How long does a process take? And can you explain the steps? And then how can we plan topics or get started? So is there anything else that you think we want to cover in this session today?
I think that sounds good. Yeah, just kind of the details of those things.
Good.
So
This is an organic conversation, so we're just kind of having a conversational format about this. And so we'll just start from the beginning. And so when you become, you get your certificate after your basic training, you've done the 40 hours of instruction and practicum, and then you have your 10 hours of consultation and you get your certificate. This is through the EMDR International Association. So for the context of this is all through the EMDR International Association, their training. There are other organizations out there. So if you have been trained in EMDR from an organization that's not an EMDRIA approved organization, this won't apply to you. They'll have their own rules and procedures. And so for us, what this means is an EMDRIA credit provider means that we can provide EMDRIA credits, or which are equivalent to continuing education units. So you need these EMDRIA credits. Why do we need them? So that when we're a member or that we go for certification or consultation, you'll need 12 of those EMDRIA credits to be able to get your credentials. And so each of those, what do you call it, credentials has 12 CEs, EMDRIA credits that go with them. And so we then in turn need somebody to provide those. And so there's two ways you can get those. You can do live or on demand. And so what you'll need to do before you formulate that, so you'll need to be able to submit this EMDRIA credit provider, and it's just a form that you're gonna send in. I think it's $50. They may have increased it to 75. And so you'll go on the website and you submit a form that says that you want to become an EMDRIA credit provider. And there's the key is you don't have to be a consultant to do this. And so I believe that you need to be certified, but don't quote me on that. And so you fill out this form. And so what does that enable you to do? So we're gonna go there next, but what questions do you have about any of that process?
When you become a credit provider, is that something that has to be continually like updated or maintained, or is it a one and done?
Um, that's a good question. Give me 1 second here. I just did my renewal. So this is something that you'll need to renew every 2 years. Right now, the policy of the EMDR International Association, when this video is recorded in 2025, is that they do require you to have that credential or that approval renewed every 2 years. So what will happen is after you submit your application that says, hey, I'd like to teach, you don't have to have a curriculum ready. You don't have to have a plan ready. So you can submit the form even if that's your goal. You just submit the program application and you only active providers can submit program applications. So you have to get that provider application and a number. So you'll have, just like we do on our licensing, we'll have a licensing number. It's kind of similar to that. And right now the fee is $75 to initiate that review process. And then so you submit the application, you have all the requirements with your CV and all those things. So that's just a requirement to be sort of a separate part of the EMDR International Association as a trainer. Now that's different than a basic trainer. This is just to offer EMDRIA credit trainings. And so we have the basic trainer, which is all, you've written a whole curriculum just based on the 8-phase protocol. And this is for providers that can teach the advanced trainings. And so it's like you can do your CEs after you have your master's degree. And so you can apply as a provider either as an organization or as an individual. And you can work on basically making sure that you can provide program content, goals and objectives, and then who will be a presenter. And in that process, you'll need to have rules and policies about how you're getting feedback, how are you monitoring the program, and then you do have to keep program records. And so you'll be able to see on the form that there's certain requirements that you have to agree to, such as a supportive environment with sexual orientation, make sure the programs are accessible under the Americans with Disabilities Act, that you're able to gain feedback, and then the idea here is that you're able to offer the training. And so when you're submitting this application, you have to have a format for gaining program records. And so what that means now is that you have to have a platform that will be able to offer the training. And so right now there's a lot of different programs you can use. I myself have used Kajabi and CEGO. I actually transitioned all of my content and trainings to CEGO because they have all of the requirements for me to also offer CE credits. And so I just went with that because there's all of that data and content already there, which also will apply to the EMDR International Association. So you need to have some sort of structure of gathering payments, offering content, in addition to kind of an idea of the information you'd like to present.
And you recommend using a platform that basically packages all of that rather than trying to do it yourself through your website or something like that.
I would say it depends on how often you're gonna provide training and then the content of the training. So if you're just gonna do a 1 credit EMDRIA course on some kind of practice, I would say it might be feasible to do it just on an Excel spreadsheet and then get your payment through whatever method. But you do need to have sort of a way of getting a course evaluation and tracking those outcomes. And so You can use maybe even like a Google spreadsheet in those cases, but in my case where it depends on the scale. So you have to decide how scalable do you want this? And so that would be the first question I would ask. Are you going to go just on a small scale, or are you going to go deliver it on to a wider audience? The other thing is that you can do a live event and then record it and use it as an on-demand resource as well. So you're also creating sustainable income over time by doing a live event, recording it, and then you can host it on a platform. So that's another benefit to creating sustainable income because therapists are busy, right? And so you can do it on your own time. And then they can also access all of those documents there. It's just a little cleaner. When you're looking at the resource library, it's not, oh, I sent you that email. And it also depends on your technical skills too, right? So there's a few like personal self-reflection evaluation questions that I would say look at your level of comfort with technology. And also like you want to make it very user friendly and be able to go back and track what you've done so that you can provide those records if you need to.
I'm interested to hear about like how did you get this idea? How did you get started? Like where were you in your practice when you realized like, oh, doing the EMDRIA credit provider is like that next step? Like how did you know you were ready for that? And
Yeah, this is a really good question. So this kind of goes back to my basic training journey. Um, so just kind of my practice has been in child welfare. I know you've adopted kids, and so I have a love for child welfare. And then I spent some time in a substance abuse clinic doing an evidence-based practice. And so I had this kind of idea of implementation and program design. I was a program director, so I kind of have a niche for programs. And that's sort of where I started kind of thinking about like these evidence-based interventions aren't producing long-term relief to patients. And so I started having this ethical dilemma of like, what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing according to this curriculum, but I'm not seeing like, I was working with parolees at that time. I'm not seeing these people really like rest in their nervous system and deal with the reasons. It was more of this, okay, what happened in therapy? Can you report that to the parole officer and these kinds of things? So there was kind of some questions I began having. And then I went to work at the hospital and I knew I've been hearing all about EMDR. I had a small private practice. And so people would say, are you doing EMDR? And I thought, well, what is this? And so then I was able to go to a training for EMDR where I live in Twin Falls, Idaho. And I didn't know it was a whole career path. So that's one of my missions is to tell EMDR therapists, you can be a business owner. This is a career path because there were all these consultants at the training, but I didn't understand like why they were there. I thought they should be like in an organization or together. So it took me a long time to kind of begin understanding all of the pieces that were happening at basic training, if that makes sense. And so there was a lot going on, and I think that's a lot of clinicians' experience is you go to the training, you don't know that you're going to be doing a practicum. There are these consultants there, but they're not the trainer. And so it wasn't laid out very well about what to expect. And some of that is just, not being familiar with the process and being from general training, that I've been to. It's just a day training and you go and you get your certificate and you're done. I didn't understand the consultation and these sorts of things. So that was one of my moments. And then in that meantime, I was teaching at Boise State University School of Social Work. I taught there for 10 years. And so I had this understanding of like policy, and that was my master's degree was in policy and social policy and research. And so I kind of had a mix of these ideas in my mind. And so then when I got to this place to where I was ready to kind of leave the hospital and launch into my private practice, I started consulting, and I'm kind of just exactly where you are with like, how do I get consultees? Why is this so hard for training organizations to allow consultants in? There was this very restrictive kind of culture where it's like, well, you'll never be a part of us, is the vibe I got. And so my vibe is yes, you can. And so I kind of wanted to be the counterculture. And so I just began looking into like this next step as I was certified. I wanted to sort of provide EMDR intensives, and that was my kind of reason for getting certified. And then I just was like looking at that next path of like teaching, and then my natural brain was like, well, what do I need to do that? I had been working in grief and loss and death and dying. I thought, oh, I want to work on EMDR and grief and loss. And so that kind of came into how do I do that? And then I decided it was like a form, and then it came into a whole program, and then I decided to write the basic training. And so it's just a step-by-step process of just following that career path and figuring out what EMDRIA has laid out for us. And then being able to hear, I was hearing from therapists like, this is so hard. How do I achieve this? Really, this is all you have to do. And sort of this darkness was around it of like, we didn't know how it was clear. And so my job is to make it very clear, just like you're enrolling in a college. You go, you enroll, you get your associates, your bachelor's, your master's, and make that very clear. Like, yes, you can do this to whatever level of ambition that you want. It was a long answer, but
No, that makes sense. That's good to know. How do you feel like it's benefited your practice and you professionally to do the EMDRIA CEs? And, you know, how do you see that return on investment? I imagine there's a bit of a delay, like it's not instantaneously, benefiting you. So how did you kind of like notice that, or what is your, concept of that?
yeah, so you submit the application, and then you actually have to submit your program. And so that requires you to have all the learning objectives, the research support, PowerPoints. And so that's all that you need to submit that all for review. And so then it was after that I had to have an idea, which to me was the grief and loss training in EMDR. So it took me a moment to conceptualize that. So if you're thinking about an idea that you'd like to teach others, um, begin thinking about what you're already doing. I say go to your resume, see what you're good at, what kind of trainings you've been interested in, and then see how you can match that with EMDR. Maybe there's something you're already doing, or you have a different take on it. And so that's kind of that process, was being able to go through the specific events and kind of line them out and do the objectives and the research so that I could say, okay, I want to offer this training. And so at that point, I was still building the consulting part of the business. And so to me, it made sense to do again more scalable and create. So there's this book, it's called The Blue Ocean Strategy. So instead of doing this competition with everyone, we're creating an uncontested market space, making the competition irrelevant. So there's lots of things we already do, but they don't do it the way I do or the way that you do. And so I'm really encouraging people to create their own value from themselves that they bring, and teaching them how to tap into that so that there's not this like fear or the scarcity kind of competition, that there's enough for everyone and that you can do this. And so that for me gave me more support and exposure so I could do the individual consultations. And I started with doing individuals and groups. And I've just found for me that was easier to continue building the individuals. And so I created a structure about how do I continue to create individual consultees. And then I developed like the program with EMDR University with let's just give them a program so they don't have to worry about all the requirements. We can support them instead of just struggling like billable hour. When I started billable hour, it felt very similar. I thought it can be really different. And so I want them to have a felt sense of understanding, being understood, being in a learning environment, but also like we talk about having the competency that you know that you got from the program versus just getting consultation. So how did you, I know you've struggled a little bit with kind of getting consultees, and you're considering this EMDRIA credit provider. Can you share a little bit about your experience with that and kind of where you see yourself going?
Yeah, I think for me, it really started with the individual consultation. That's something I really like teaching, and it's actually really energizing for me. I like kind of getting in the weeds and explaining things. I there's such an emotional cost to working with clients, even when we work on those boundaries, even when we don't take it home with us, it's still really heavy trauma work. It's great to get that SUD to zero, but it's still sexual abuse, right? It's still physical abuse. It's still neglect. It's still really heavy stuff. And I like the idea of supporting other therapists, and I think we have similar values about, I really respected the people that I did consultation with, but they felt like a little bit on a pedestal to me, and I wanted to impress them. And I felt like, oh, I'm being judged, but I want to be good enough. And even though they were very supportive, um, I feel like I want to be very down to earth and with consultees and tell me when you've messed up. Tell me when you feel like you did something totally wrong, instead of feeling like you have to be on your best behavior and like prove to me. Um, and so, yeah, I really also kind of like that countercultural idea of this doesn't have to be um, just a top-down process of, the the consultants are these gatekeepers and they're trying to keep people out. When no, I think they really are encouraging new therapists and people new to EMDR to come in. And so right now, I'm just in the process of doing individual consultation. I have considered doing group consultation, but it seems like there needs to be a bit more momentum and a bit more just the numbers for that to happen. And so I think that was one of the reasons why you were like, okay, Karen, you need more exposure. You need to do the CEs because at this rate, yes, like just getting a consultee here and there, it's not enough for groups.
Yeah, and just because people come to the training, they'll have other consultants that they work with, but you're establishing your credibility, your authority, your expertise, and your professional resume. And so still there's also gains, as you go through that process as well. And I wanted to really kind of be that, let's talk about what your goals are, but it doesn't have to be, this sort of pyramid uh, dynamic to where these only few selected people are at the top, that we can be a team, that we can support each other in the goals that we have, but also we don't necessarily have to be able to compete because we're all different and you're not me and I'm not you. I'm going to do it different than you, but also this next step is really, it's like stepping out into the limelight and putting yourself out there. It's really fun and can be really encouraging. And also to your point, though, I appreciate what you had shared about the sexual abuse and the trauma and being in it. I think also, in my opinion, this is a protective factor for clinicians because we can also get income, build our own selves, but also not have to just do it in a session format and still do what we love. My other reason was I have not now. Well, I have an 8-year-old and twins that are 5. And so when I had my twins, my pie became much smaller. And I thought, how can I create the same amount without, the bandwidth suffering? And so that's another resilience factor that I say if you have the expertise and the skills, go ahead and try it and see if that's something that you can do. And if you enjoy teaching, let's talk about that and talk about how you teach and deliver that method. And I think that's where EMDRIA is going with the consultant role, is giving us sort of teaching platforms and ways that we all deliver the same message in a more uniformed manner. Um, so I'm kind of excited about that so that like if you're a consultant, I'm a consultant, we can talk about how we're delivering it and we can have that conversation about just where I'm a consultant and so are you. We can have the same baseline of learning. And so I'm kind of excited about that. And I really like that people know what they're going to learn and what they're going to get and celebrating the wins when we get those little wins in the session. Because it is a professional development process, right? And instead of me saying you need to redirect or use an interweave or do this protocol, okay, that's really great. And what else can we do to support you? So we all have a lot of knowledge, and some people are more suited for training. And so I encourage you to self-reflect. Can you deliver that training in a way that's engaging and can keep the audience engaged and you have a real relatable personality? Because that's also part of it. And just try it out. And it's not sort of that pie in the sky kind of idea that you can do this and it's possible. But just, it's something more different to work on than just kind of the regular therapy that we can kind of get burnout on because we do get lots of really serious cases.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. It sounds like you don't have any regrets or, wish that you wouldn't have started doing the credit provider. It sounds like it's just been really positive for you.
It's been really positive, but I also really understand the struggle of building a consulting part because I think it's like, okay, we're just supposed to go consult. And I think maybe this is what EMDRIA felt. It's like, okay, let's walk them through the process a little bit. Because when we're certified, we have the phases, we have the model, we have the interventions, but we don't really have that. And so I kind of felt like a fish out of water. Like I'm going to develop this Facebook post and put it in a group. Do I do the individuals? Do I do the groups? What do I do? It just kind of felt uncomfortable. And so yeah, I wanted to just kind of that's where the EMDR University came forward so that I can provide that throughout the career path and just tell people like, but there's going to be struggles too, like and well, we're here to support you with that you don't have to feel so alone and like we're competing with each other. We can be a team. We can be a team of experts. And you can also do it with people and make colleagues and lifelong friends. I've had, two really good colleagues that we've developed grief trainings, and so that's been really fun. And so just seeing if it's a good fit. And then maybe you decide you do want to be an NBCC or an ASWB provider to offer CEs, right? And so just kind of giving you that platform to celebrate people.
Yeah. No, I think that all makes sense. And, I really appreciate that you're really encouraging and motivating and saying that, therapists can do it. Um, Anything else that you wish you would have known about doing like the EMDRIA credits before, that you're like, man, if someone had told me blank, that would be really helpful, or anything that like a very newbie person should know?
I guess I just wish I would have known that I can do it without having to be a consultant, number one. I wish that would have came across. I thought I had to be this expert, but you don't have to be an expert. You just have to know a few tricks about a few things. And so once you've practiced it for a while and you have some value to offer, go ahead and try it. I know we have a lot of like imposter syndrome or am I worth it? You are, try it. And if it's not for you, then you don't have to do another training, but it's also on our terms. So I would just say like you can do the flexibility because you can do it on a schedule that works for you and a frequency that works for you. So I would say that freedom is good. And what I wish I would have known is like consider getting a platform when you're ready and try it and see what fits. CE Go I really love because you can set up everything and you don't have to pay until people register. So you kind of have that freedom to do that. And they'll walk you through and they have a lot of support there instead of just struggling like I did when I was in Kajabi, like trying to figure it out on my own. They have a really good support staff that will help you with the Zoom settings and all of the things. So I wish I would have known kind of that there were platforms out there that offered support in the process of offering CEs and credits so that I didn't feel like I had to do it alone. Because honestly, like, I don't know how to do the closed captioning on Zoom, or I don't know how to do these certain technical things. And there's a whole support system that does. So, not feeling like I just am the only one and that I can access different systems. And that's my job, I feel like, is to tell people, like, hey, there's this resource you can use to support you so that kind of I've done the work for you, the hard work and figuring it out. Let me just give you this golden nugget. And because I didn't even start with CEGO till probably 6 months ago, maybe. And so I've been doing this for 3 years and I was struggling on my own with automations and email lists and pricing and payment. And so, be kind to yourself. And I would also say, like, make connections and talk to colleagues. And that's been one of my best recommendations is when you're at trainings, you'll find colleagues that you'll make connections with and that are enjoyable. And so it's not that distress of that person coming into your office like, oh, okay, what am I going to do today? How am I going to do the treatment plan versus like, oh, I'm so excited to see how Karen's developed since last time.
No, I love that. I like that you said that the CE Go is is for beginners, is for starters, is you don't have to be a tech pro. And I like that you also said that you don't have to pay until people register, right? So it's not like we have to take on all this risk and investment
Right.
and something that maybe works or maybe doesn't, or maybe just works just a tiny bit until we really get it going. But yeah, I think that makes sense.
And I want
Well,
to also know, Karen, oh, sorry, were you going to say something there?
I was just going to say you've answered all my questions, and this was really helpful. And I think, yeah, I think a lot of therapists could benefit from just having this information.
And where can people find you if they're, can you talk a little bit about your expertise, what you're offering for consultation, and where people can go to sign up?
Yeah, that's a great question. My website is lakewayemdr.com. So Lakeway, Lakeway, EMDR.com. And I do in-person therapy here in Texas, close to Austin, with individuals, no couples, adults, but I do, 18 and up. Um, I would say, and I feel so privileged to have kind of fallen into the different trainings that I have, because I feel like EMDR works really well when you know how to work with dissociation. So I do parts work, I do ego state therapy. It's very simple. I think one thing that I'm passionate about in consultation is that attachment work has gotten very esoteric and when you do EMDR, it's very simple when you have a loving, nurturing part or a figure of love, a figure of nurture, take care of what we needed when we were traumatized, and it's very easy. Um, so I think that's something I feel passionate about is the attachment stuff. I really appreciate the research and people that deep dive into that, but then it's almost made it not accessible to therapists. Like, wait, how do we just do simple attachment
Yeah,
interventions with clients?
good.
And so, yeah, I think parts work pulls it all together.
And
Doing,
you just wrote your training, simple attachment interventions, right? And so
yeah,
that's how
but
easy it could be, right?
yeah, but doing parts work with EMDR, it just smooths things out.
Oh, yeah.
I really like that there's a format for handling dissociation instead of us working against it or EMDR trying to fight dissociation. It kind of works together. So I would say that that's my specialty. And yeah, really helping consultees figure out how to do the mechanics of EMDR, the basics of EMDR, but also these complex situations. I think it's easy to talk about like dissociation and attachment and EMDR, but actually when we combine it, it's a lot of clinical skills.
Yeah,
It's advanced clinical work. It's easy to hold space. It's easy to do the mechanics of EMDR. It's easy to track how dissociative or present someone is, but doing it all at the same time is
right.
actually really advanced work. And I think that's one thing that we don't talk about is like, this is actually really advanced to pull together. It's okay for that to be hard for someone or to struggle with that or not know how to do it in real life.
That's exactly where I was when I started ego state interventions, and tried to do that. So I think that's the basic point, right? Is we're looking at the systems, and I appreciate now your clinical system look too. So I'm excited for people to kind of work with you. Can you tell them how to sign up with you? Do they email you? Is there a phone number?
Yeah, on my website, there's a contact me form for anyone that wants consultation. You're also welcome to just reach out an email. It's Karen@lakewayemdr.com, but it's on my website. And yeah.
Good. Yeah, and I think that's a really, we get a lot of those questions. A lot of therapists may be scared of dissociation. So just kind of put that away in your brain. You have a resource. If you have a question, you can schedule with Karen. So we want to thank everyone today. Thank you, Karen, for bringing this forward and this beautiful conversation. We certainly appreciate and celebrate you and all the work that you do and the patients' lives that you transform. I am Kathy Couch, your EMDR therapist and consultant in Twin Falls, Idaho. You can reach me at rewired360.com. We have your EMDR University where we walk you through the EMDRIA EMDR career path in a group and a cohort model. So you don't have to feel like you do it alone. We specialize in grief and loss trainings. We have a documentation training and soon to be a basic training. So stay tuned, more to come. We have a mailing list with a free resource library that's yours for a lifetime. So you can tap into that if you need, and always have a resource. So until then, we'll see you soon, friends. Talk to you soon.